Hi everybody, Dhaman Mehta here, and thank you for once again joining me on my journey as I go through my favorites list on fanfiction.net. For those of you that don't know, I've been reading fanfiction now for 16 years, and a few years ago, quite a few years ago now, I decided I was going to go back to the first site that I started reading fanfiction on and go through my favorites list on that site to see if my taste or the things that I liked back then I still like now. I've been going through them in the order of publication date, so right now I'm near the end of 2013, which is pretty good since I started in 2006. But still got a lot to go. So here these stories are. As always, I will link these stories in the description. So if you want to give them a read for yourself, feel free to. So now, without further ado, let's dive in. Starting with The Thunder God and His Maiden by TheTroubledNeophyte. And this is a Harry Potter and of MCU Avengers crossover. But what this really, it says Avengers on the tin, but what it really is it's a retelling of the first Thor movie that gets about halfway through with a female Harry Potter in the lead role instead of Jane Foster. Not that Jane Foster doesn't exist, she got called away for some other meeting, and Fem Harry is a friend of hers, so she just takes over the research and falls into all of the, the romance with Thor and everything. So aside from that, there's some enjoyment to be had. Iris and Darcy have a lot of fun interactions, and Iris is less. She uses her magic more and stuff as ways to get back at Shield and get through stuff that Jane didn't have access to. So that's a little fun, but in the end, it's half a movie with pretty minor changes for the most part. I wouldn't be mad if I ever stumbled across this by accident again, but this is not something I would ever seek out to read for another time, so it's going to fall off my list. Next for this video is Wail of the Banshee by Black Hole 1. And this is, I think this is the first Worm fanfic on my list from fanfiction.net. I think this is the first one there. Don't know if it's the first one I read. I don't think it is, but it's definitely one of the first ones that I ever read of Worm. And this is probably what started me on the rabbit hole of my Worm obsession that I have going forward, because now on the other sites that I read, Worm is by far the most common category of fic that I read. So yeah, I still have not read Worm's the actual story of Worm, so I only know it through fanfiction and osmosis from there. I stumbled on this because I was a huge fan of Warframe, which this is a crossover of Worm and Warframe. Huge fan. I bought the Grand Founders Pass and everything, so I had my username on one of the planets for a bit before they restructured their map. But yeah, I have not read this in a long time, and coming back to it with it's actually really fresh compared to most Worm fics that I've been reading, because a lot of the Worm fics that I seem to just gravitate to nowadays end up diving deep and into Taylor's problems and stuff, and to a degree kind of fetishize or just highlight the just love the Taylor Herbert is suffering cliche or trope, I guess. And this one kind of it's still there. The Taylor still gets more than her fair share of shit thrown her way and is constantly getting problem after problem shoved in her face, but it's less super. It feels more grounded to a degree, while also this story brushes past a lot of the shit, or not brushes past, but at least lets Taylor move on quicker. And I think it's a nice entry point, even if people are not that familiar with Worm. Granted, it go because this is more of a universe merger than just a alt power fic. So there actually is a lot of other things that go in, which makes the canon go off the rails pretty quickly, which is interesting. So I won't say this is a replacement for canon, but it is a good introduction that doesn't dive into all of the grimdark that Worm and a lot of Worm fanfic like to wallow in. The merger, I feel, works very well. The extra elements throw in nice bit of chaos into the whole city of Brockton Bay. Taylor's mindset because of this possible merger and stuff is pretty interesting, and like makes it so that it's not just the banal teenager woe is me, like, because it kind of gives her a bit of forced maturity. It's just sad to see that this fic mostly ends where a lot of fics go to die for Worm, which is the Leviathan fight, basically, like a little bit after the Leviathan fight. Though there is another arc on the Space Battles forum of this fic, so if you want to see that. But still, a lot happens in that first like month or two of Worm, so we have a lot of story to dig into. I really still find this a very good story and enjoyable, and I recommend it. It's going to stay on my list. Following that, we have a one-shot called High School SAO by Gabriel Blessing. This is a High School DxD fic crossed over with SAO, where Rias, a little bit before the fight with Riser, ends up getting two new pawns in the form of Kirito and Asuna, and they bring quite a few surprises to the mix. Honestly, the story is really wholesome, mainly revolving around Rias's peerage getting to know Asuna and Kirito, along with the overly sweet actions of the couple. It's a short story that works well as a one-shot. Like, it's contained, it goes to them, Rias meeting them, and then deals with the Riser fight, which is like a week or two after. Like, I don't think it's that much of a gap between when they meet. I think maybe a month, but it's just that Rias recruiting the two, and then up to the Riser fight. And it works fine as a one-shot. Like, it leaves it, there's more than enough feelings here. I've also seen some other author like took this same premise and tried to expand on it a bit, and I think that works just as well, because this setup works as a first chapter as well. I really did enjoy this, and honestly, for some High School DxD fluff that's not all about sex and everything, I think this is pretty good, and it'll stay on my list. Number 4 is Minato's The Art of Being Dead by Pyrotenka. This is a Naruto story where turns out that Minato and Kushina both got sucked into... that is true. They both got... at least I know Minato is still in Naruto Seal. But in this one, Minato and Kushina were both in the Seal. They're both aware and constantly aware and looking through Naruto's eyes, seeing how their child is going through life. And then once Kakashi's bell test happens, they find out that they can start possessing his Kagebushins, shadow clones, and so they come out and go to meet his parent, to be his parents. So like the way their behavior goes at the beginning, and the premise, like, this is played straighter than you would expect. Like, the story itself gets to the climax of the wave mission before stopping, and it has a bunch of fun moments, but it's really not as like wild or like cracky as like the first chapters, like character introductions of Kushina and Minato would make you believe it should be. This is another one where it's like, if I found this randomly, I would be satisfied, but it's not something I would look out for, and so it's not going to stay on my list. Next is Honestly, Harry by Avalonian Dream, and this is a short collection of small Harry Potter snippets that are just a few good doses of crack. Like, they're all just small bits of fun. Sure, I'm pretty sure they'll bring a smile to your face. I found each of these great for a quick laugh. I enjoyed them. It's gonna stay on my list. Number 6 is Avatar of the Gods by Neon Zangetsu. And this is an Avatar the Last Airbender crossover with Naruto, where Naruto is like after the events of all of Naruto stuff. Turns out he is like, you know, cursed with a certain version of immortality, where he's like the Avatar, where he's reincarnating every so often. Except he's not losing his memories, he's reincarnating as himself, and his powers are slightly like changing. And so he gets reincarnated in the South Pole, and he's there for a bit right before Katara finds Aang, and then joins their gang for the journey. And then from there we get a speedrun of books 1 and 2. Well, we get a speedrun of the events of books 1 and 2, all compressed into the time frame of book 1. Because what happens is, like, a couple events of book 1 happen, like they get up to Kyoshi Island, and then on the journey to go meet Avatar Roku, when they want to go to the Fire Temple, Naruto splits off from the others, and the others basically continue through the events of book 1, whereas Naruto goes and like meets Toph and gets this and deals with Azula and stuff like that, and then, you know, gets through all the events of book 2, and then goes to meet back up with them at the North Pole or South Pole. I can't remember which one it is, but gets to meet up with that. Goes back to meet up with them at the pole. Aside from one small section here that I found interesting, everything else in the story kind of flew by, without enough time to leave an impact. Like, it basically ends up being a series of fights where Naruto OPs his way through everything, and then small moments of exposition that seem to fast forward through relationship building with the people. It's not terrible. I just don't see a reason to like search for this and like go out and thing. It's another one of those that are like, it's the third one on this list that's mediocre. I don't see a reason to look for this again. It's gonna fall off my list. And lastly, for this video, we have Dark Lord Syndicate by U9. And this is another Harry Potter one-shot that's comedy-based. Short fic where a truly evil wizard kidnaps baby Harry Potter to twist into his dark apprentice. And before it flips the script for a kind of old joke. The joke is funny, and I did enjoy it, but it's not one that I think I would like come back to again and again and like revisit it. I'd say give it a look for a chuckle or two, and I think you'll enjoy it, but it's not something that I would want to repeatedly revisit. So that's the main criteria for staying on my list, and since that falls short, it's gonna fall off my list. So there we go. Those are the 7 stories I have for this video. Fan fiction status time. I've now read 979 stories, and 462 of them have stayed on my list. So there we go. As always, links to the stories are in the description down below, as well as links to playlist for all these videos for this journey. My fanfiction.net profile if you want to see my favorites list from there, and as well as the forum on Sufficient Velocity, where I also post this all in a written form if you want to see it there as well. So there we go. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.